If you ever learned trigonometric functions before, your least favorite part was probably having to memorize all the values of trig functions as special angles. Well, some teachers want you to memorize the values for angles up to 360 degrees, and that's even harder. In this video, I want to show you an easy way of figuring out sine and cosine values over special angles up to 360 degrees. Now, the tangent value will not be considered in this video because if you have to find the tangent value, you can use the formula tangent theta equal to sine theta over cosine theta. This means that if you know the value of the sine and cosine, you can compute the tangent by computing this fraction. And that doesn't take that long, so we will just consider sine and cosine function values only. If you look at only the sine and cosine values, you'll see that these numbers are not that hard to remember. It's actually very easy to remember. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. Now let me explain what I mean by that. It really is easy to remember these values. They are easy as 1, 2, 3. So they all look like this. And they are easy as 1, 2, 3, right? You might complain that my first number doesn't look like what I have over here, but square root of 1 is 1, so this really is same as 1 over 2. Now, as a bonus, if you write down the numbers above here in this form, you can see that the number 1/2 is the smallest, and the square root of 3 over 2 is the largest. So there's a inequality like this. This being the largest, this being the smallest. And in order to get a feel for these numbers, one nice way to do this is to give them some nicknames. So I'm going to call this number 1/2 as small. I'm going to call this as medium. And I'm going to call this as large. I mean, think about small, medium, large as when you go to a deli and you try to order a coffee. They come in sizes small, medium, large. Right? So when you think about these values, just think about coffee in the deli shop, or vice versa. Every time if you go order something in the deli, just look at the menu where it says small, medium, large, and think about these three numbers, those three easy numbers: 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. How does this help us? Well, for these nicknames to be useful, you have to remember the graphs of sine and cosine. I know, remembering and memorizing, these are not very easy. But human beings are much more adept at recalling pictures than numbers or words. Just think about how many times you remember a person's face and can't remember the name. So if you remember the graph, it will stay with you a lot longer than having to memorize numbers. So let's review the graph of sine and cosine. How did the graph go? Well, do it like this. You're going to draw the axis and start out by marking the 360 because that's the period of a sine function or cosine function. So here's 360. And half of 360 is 180. Half of 180 is 90. And the midpoint, 180 and 360, the midpoint is 180 plus 90 degrees, which is 270 degrees. Okay. And this is 0. Once you have these numbers marked on the x-axis, you're going to go 0, up, 0, down, 0 to create the graph of y equals to sine of x. Okay. You do a similar thing for the cosine. You start by the x's again, 360, 180, and 90. And this is 90 plus 180, that's 270 degrees. And then for the cosine graph, y equal to cosine, you start from 1, and then go down to 0, and then -1, 0, and up. Now take a good look at these graphs. You will have to remember them if you want to make use of the small, medium, large values. Remember, the small, medium, large values are, again, square root over 2. They all look like this. And it's just 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's put these two things together to actually figure out the value of the sine. Here's the sine curve. And let's ask the following question. What is the value of sine of 60 degrees? Well, if you look at the graph of the sine with these values marked, remember that in each of the 90-degree intervals, there are 3 special angles that you get by adding 30, 45, and 60 to these numbers. So between 90 and 180, you have 90 plus 30, which is 120, 90 plus 45, which is 135, 90 plus 60, which is 150, and so on and so on. Now, where does 60 degrees belong? It belongs between 0 and 90 degrees. In fact, it's one of those special angles, 30, 45, and 60. 30, 45, and 60. Now, the value of the trig function at these points are the height that you can build over this site, reaching the graph. Okay? And do you see it? You have three lengths, right? Small, medium, large. So what's the value of sine 60? This is the large value. Just think about the large coffee cup. The large value is, easiest 1 to 3, it looks like this, and you put a 3 there. That's the value of sine 60. Let's do another one. How about sine of 210 degrees? Okay, sine of 210 degrees. That belongs between 180 and 270, and 210 is really 180 plus 30 degrees. So here's 210, and it's 30, 45, 60. It belongs here. And then this time the curve is under, so when you build your lengths, you have to go under, just like this. Where this first one, this is the 210 degrees that we are interested in. Okay, look. What is this length? Among these 3, it's the small one, right? So what's the value of the small? It's square root of 1 over 2, but let's just write down 1 over 2. But wait, it's going under. Is there anything different when you go over? Well, if you're going up, that's positive. If you're going down, it's negative. So not only this is a small value, but it's also a negative value. So the value of sine 210 degrees is -1/2. Okay, another practice, this time for cosine functions. This is the graph of y equals to cosine. And let's mark the 4 very important values for trigonometric functions, 90, 180, and 270, and 360. Okay, let's try cosine of 225 degrees. Okay, 225 belongs between 180 and 270, and this ending number 5 gives away the fact that it's right, the one with 45 degrees, right in the middle, right? So if you did 30, 45, 60 plus 180, so this angle is 30 plus 180, so this is 210, 45 plus 180, that's 225, and 60 plus 180, that's 240, and those are the 3 lengths. And as you can see, small, medium, large, this one's the middle one, so it's among the 1, 2, 3, it's a 2. and because it's going under, it must be negative. That's how you figure out the value of sine and cosine over the special angles. You can also practice this using the radians, and radians is not that hard either. So if you were to do this for the radians, let's see, you just have to change these angles in terms of radians. Okay. All right. So how do you do the radians? Let's try the radians. So remember that 2 pi is the period of the cosine or sine, and half of 2 pi is 2 pi divided by 2 is pi, so here's pi in terms of radians. Half of pi is pi over 2, and this is the midpoint between pi and 2 pi. How do you calculate the midpoint, the coordinate of the midpoint? The coordinate of the midpoint is simply the average of two numbers. So I'm going to take the average of pi and 2 pi, add the two numbers up, divide by 2, so that's 3 pi over 2. So this is 3 pi over 2. And again, there are 3 special angles in between, but to tell you the truth, it's actually easier if you first think in terms of degrees and convert that to radians. So for example, if you were to do cosine of 2 pi over 3, if that's the question, I would think like this. Pi over 3 is 60 degrees, because 180 divided by 3 is 60. 60 times 2 is 120 degrees. 120 degrees falls between 90 and 180, and it's closer to the 91, right? 90 plus 3. So 90 plus 30 is 120, so it's actually closer to the 91. And you can kind of think that the other ones fall here. So what kind of value is this? This is a negative value, and it's a small value, so it's negative 1/2. So this is the basic idea. You should practice this a lot, and once you have it practiced, then you will never have to memorize the values of trig functions again. You will always have them at hand. And with more practice, you can remember this a lot quicker than what I'm doing in this video. Thank you.